You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. Between 2 and 6% of people have hoarding disorder, yet very few of us talk about it. Learn about the condition from me, somebody who has it, as well as academics, therapists and other experts I interview. Find out how to support the podcast at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Finally, I am not a doctor, I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you? I am okay. I have to start this week's episode with an apology, and then I have, I'm going to say it, a really cool episode for you. So, apology. There was no episode last week. That hasn't happened for several years, I think. So I'm going to tell you what happened and explain it. So, the episode last week was all planned out. I have a detailed plan of every point I wanted to make. And then I had a busy work week, so my plan was to record it, edit it and transcribe it on Friday. It's never ideal to have to do all three in a day, but it is possible. But then on Friday I was struggling. My mood wasn't great and life got in the way. So I thought, okay, I'll do it on Saturday. I'm very rarely late. I need to allow myself permission to occasionally put an episode out on a Saturday instead of a Friday. I know that you know I'm doing my best. I know sometimes that I'm doing my best. So that was the plan. And then I didn't. And the problem was the topic for this episode would only work last week. There's no other week in the year it would work in. So I kept thinking, I will record it and it will be late. It has to be a first week of December episode. It has to be. Because the topic of the episode was a reverse advent calendar. And the idea was, in very short, that rather than an advent calendar where you bring something new into your home every day, we could do a reverse advent calendar where something leaves our home every day through December. And I had the whole thing planned out and I didn't get myself together to record it. And then by the time Monday came, Tuesday came, and it was clear I was not getting this episode recorded, it felt too late then to put out an old repeat episode instead. So I panicked and put my head in the sand. So I do apologise for the lack of episode last week. Okay, apology over. Now this week's stuff. So I've been doing a slightly sneaky thing on the podcast all year. And that is that every guest I've interviewed in 2025, I have asked questions related to their experience or their work or their specialism. But there is also one question that I have asked every guest. And the plan has been to use this episode at the end of the year to collate everybody's advice and experience from the year into one episode of things that my guests do to improve or maintain their own mental health. And the idea is that with this variety of people's ideas, and I will add my own as well, we can all get inspired and motivated by other people's advice for life. Whether they are a person who struggles with objects and stuff, whether they are an academic or a therapist, we've all got things we do that can help us, and we can all benefit from some good advice for life. So what I'm going to use this episode for is to share the advice of every guest this year, so that you can see which ideas they had that you might be able to use to improve or maintain your own mental health going into the end of this year and the start of next year. It would also be amazing to get your favourite tips. Do feel free to email me at info@overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. So the first guest of the year was episode 172, when I spoke to Harriet Impey, who had been the subject of a documentary film called Where Dragons Live, which is about her experience of clearing out her parents' very full and very large house. Interestingly and excitingly, that film has just been named in The Guardian's top 50 films of 2025. So that's very, very cool. So here is how Harriet answered that question. What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
It has to be meditating, definitely, and mindfulness in general. And mindfulness very much in the sense of trying to be present. I have a wonderful, wonderful friend who has done, who does mindful self-compassion courses based on Kristin Neff's work. And they are absolutely life-changingly brilliant. Mindful self-compassion, I think, is what's wonderful about it is that you don't need anybody else. You can do it if you're struggling on your own because you're giving yourself what you're not getting elsewhere. And I think it's incredible. And that has helped me so much to deal with my own feelings and anxiety and everything. Yeah, I think that's absolutely incredible. And if you Google Kristin Neff, mindful self-compassion, there are lots of places where there are courses and stuff like that, and you can do them online and read her book. And anyway, I sound like I'm being paid to say this, but I'm not. I think it's absolutely bonkersly brilliant. And also ACT therapy. I mean, I have a fantastic therapist who does specifically therapy for people with disabilities and chronic illness and terminal illness, and she's disabled herself and is just the most amazing woman on the planet. So, it's very much other people, other wise people, I think I would say is the main thing.
Yeah, I know the name Kristin Neff, but I don't think I've read it. I find mindfulness incredibly useful as well. I can't deal with meditating. I can't deal with that degree of silence, kind of mental silence. But my closest thing to meditating that I do find incredibly helpful is putting the shipping forecast on. There's just
it's sort of verbal white noise.
Yeah, it's evocative, but also kind of meaningless to me as somebody not on a ship.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just the perfect level, and it's got a rhythm. And I subscribe to the Shipping Forecast podcast.
I love it.
Yeah, so I've always got one in my podcast feed. Like, if things are getting a bit much, it's like, I think I need a shipping forecast.
Viking, southeast 5 to 7, backing east 6 to gale 8. Showers, good. Northward Sierra, southeasterly, backing easterly 5 or 6, fair, good.
I mean, to be fair, on the mental, the mental noise, I can't do non-guided meditations because I can't stay in that place long enough. The squirrel inside my head is bouncing around. But guided meditations, I think, are wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, definitely employing more mindfulness in my life has been incredibly helpful. Where am I now? What's happening now?
Yeah.
Rather than what if or what was, kind of, okay, let's just bring it all back to now.
Yeah. And also, I think for me as well, the kind of practicing non-attachment and having this sense, particularly with my kind of the controlling level of our childhood, having this sense of like, just let it go. Why am I defending my position, particularly in a relationship, and like grasping this being right, it doesn't matter. Like, and obviously you don't just go, oh, well, I'm just going to decide it doesn't matter anymore. But in the moment thinking, Is this the hill I want to die on? Is this worth it? What am I doing? That self-reflection of let go, let go of this one. You know, you can be married or you can be right. And they say that, don't they?
Being mindful and allowing ourselves to give ourselves compassion can be so hard, but so healing as well. It can be a deceptively simple idea, or it can be an immensely complicated idea. But both things are things that everybody can benefit from, and everybody can do with giving ourselves a little bit more of. It was also interesting to listen back to that, because I'd said in there that I can't deal with meditation. I can't deal with that degree of stillness or quiet or stopping. Now, I'm not a transformed personality. However, I do now occasionally meditate. I still find it hard, but I occasionally try. And I decided that if I can get a few minutes into a meditation and then turn it off before it ends, I haven't failed at meditating. I have succeeded at doing a few minutes meditation, and that approach is helping me at least try. Now, Dr. Jan Eppingstall is obviously a regular guest, so I didn't want to ask her every episode this same question. So what I did with Jan is I asked her at 2 different points of the year. But in episode 174, we talked about how to feel grounded when we're overwhelmed or dysregulated. And I asked Jan the same question I've asked every guest. Have a listen to her answer. What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
I would say gratitude. I would say gratitude is my top one, because we're wired for negativity. We notice all the negative things, but if we can actually pull out gratitude, if we put simplest things, hot shower, warm weather, whatever, I think we really do add a positive spin on life. The other thing is unsubscribing to emails for reducing my anxiety.
I sent you a meme the other day. It was something like, someone said, should I spend 2 seconds unsubscribing from this email, or should I spend 1 second every day for the rest of my life deleting it?
Deleting it. Exactly. And mine had got up to 400 or 500. Like on a Monday, I'd go, I wouldn't look over the weekend, and I'd go in on Monday and there'd be 400 in my random email inbox. I'm like, 400? What? I'm now down to like sort of 40 over the weekend max. And even that is way too many. And I'm sure there's some that I've unsubscribed to that just keep popping up, those darned companies that have their marketing that just keeps spitting out all sorts of different stuff. But that has really reduced my anxiety. I often would not want to sit down at my computer because I knew that I would have this massive, and there was nothing in there I wanted, but it would get me clicking through to other things that I didn't need. That's for sure. So that's my 2 things.
Yeah, I think they're good ones. So, Jan's first tip was one about gratitude. And it really can be refreshing to just make ourselves notice the things that went well, the things that made us feel happy, our little glimmers in the day, the way the sunset turned the sky red, or the jolly neighbour we had a little chat with. She also talked about a very practical one, unsubscribing from emails. Most humans are very familiar with an overfull inbox. And I think if we hoard, and I know Jan and I did an episode on digital hoarding, that can be extra present. And also if we have a tendency towards over acquiring, having an excess of promotional emails coming into our inbox can be actively damaging because it's very, very, very tempting to buy when we see a special offer. So I think both of those are really good tips. In episode 175, I had a conversation with professional organiser Jasmine Slay, and we talked about taking the scary first steps and building up the courage to call a professional organiser. It was a really, really interesting episode in which Jasmine and I really talked through what goes through her head when she first hears from somebody, what goes through her head when she first enters somebody's home, how those things can be made easier or indeed harder. It was a really good conversation. Have a listen to Jasmine's answer to the question. In your own life, what is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
Really interesting one. I mean, there's all the obvious ones, which is...
The obvious ones are good.
Making sure I get plenty of sleep is, seems to be essential. Honestly, anyone who's had a few nights not sleeping has a good insight to working with clients for whom a good night, a clear night's many hours of sleep is a rarity. You can see how it really affects every part of their lives. So I'm lucky that I do get good sleep, but I do love to read, and I sometimes have to make myself read.
I'm the same.
Even though I enjoy reading.
I'm exactly the same.
And even as I see myself doing it, putting my book there, but doing many, many other things before, I find that an interesting bit of psychology of myself, having spent all day trying to convince people to engage with things that are joyous for them and interesting and better for their well-being. That sounds judgy, but they've said themselves that would make them feel better. And yet here we are, self-sabotaging, finding all the other things to do rather than the thing that you enjoy. And so I find that, so I suppose reading, yes, but I absolutely find it fascinating the days that I've kept my book by the bed and have not picked it up. What's going on there?
Especially if you've spent all day going, oh, I can't wait to get back to the book. And you still don't. I'm exactly the same. I love reading, and yet the hoops I have to jump through to make myself do it sometimes.
It's so absorbing. It's the complete opposite to scrolling on my phone and chores and all the other things. In my own mind, I know it's sort of part of it is, I feel it's very selfish to sit there and just, luxuriate in being immersed in a different story. But that's really interesting, isn't it? Having spent, like I say, all day trying to assist people to. So yeah, I find it fascinating. But a good book, and then I feel much better in myself when I've got a good book on the go.
Yeah. How are you with endings of good books? I sometimes feel bereft. If a book was especially good and then it has to disappear from my brain, I'm not daily engaging with the characters. I feel bereft.
It's very different to any other medium, I think, because it so lives in your brain. I mean, bear in mind that I'm getting to the sort of age as well where it's entirely possible for me to go back to a book 6 months later and read it almost afresh.
Yeah. So we have two things there. Sleep, yes. As somebody whose mental health has wobbled this year, sleep was one of the first things to go for me. My sleep became horrendous. And then you get in a real vicious cycle where you're not sleeping well because you're struggling, but then you struggle more because you're not sleeping well. So there's definitely a lot to say for a good night's sleep. And the thing about reading, about not self-sabotaging when we know something will help, but we just don't do it. We put it off. I suspect most of us can relate to that. something either that would help or just that we enjoy, but for some reason we don't do it. And I think this is a call to allow ourselves to do the fun things or the healing things or the soothing things. It's important. Hoarding darlings are podcast listeners who get access to extra from me. I write a bonus post every month with a bit of an update from me, additional links, answers to extra questions from guests, some recommendations, and a dehoarding playlist. You can become a dehoarding darling and help to support the podcast, as well as getting this bonus monthly post at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. In episode 178, I had a conversation with Sam, who is the child of a mum who hoards. And Sam talked about their experience growing up in a hoarded home and how that affected them both as a child but also as an adult, the kind of long-lasting effects it had on Sam's self-esteem and self-worth and sense of their place in the world. This was a really popular episode. A lot of people found it very moving, as did I. And here was Sam's answer to that question. What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
Well, yeah, definitely the writing things down, I think, is really helpful. So I do those lists, like things that I'm proud of myself of and things that I should be grateful for. I think gratefulness is such a good one because you don't actually have to have anything that's like crazy. Like it could be like, I'm grateful for the sun shining. I'm grateful that I had a nice piece of toast in the morning. Like it literally could be anything, and it just helps you kind of see the positives in life when that's maybe difficult for you, because it is difficult for people across their life in certain points. And I think you just need to remind yourself that there is something good in your life. Even when it's hard to find, it will be there, even if it's a tiny thing. And the other thing, is kind of, I would say running as well really helps me. Probably not for everyone. There's some exercises that are for certain people and some for others. So I'm not going to suggest that everyone should just start running a marathon or whatever for your mental health. But I do think exercise in general, even if you can do like a small thing, like even if it's walking around the block or whatever, it just helps you realize that there's things outside of your lived experience. Like I remember when I was younger, now looking back, I'm like, when I was studying, why didn't I go outside and go to the library? Like, why didn't I walk around the block? Why didn't I do any of these things? It's because you don't think outside of the experience. It's like you're almost just trapped within it. So you're unable to be like, oh, I could have done this or I could have done that. And I think that's why certain times when you're in those experiences, having a support worker or someone outside of yourself to be like, have you tried this or have you tried that? And you're like, oh, this is a really simple thing that I'm telling a young person to do or whatever. But actually, they might have not thought about that at all because they're unable to think about anything else but what they're going through. So I think even if it is that small thing and it seems kind of ridiculous, like, what's walking around the block going to do? But actually, it could be the difference between somebody not being able to do anything and actually, oh, look, you've gone and walked around the block. You've actually done something today. That's really impressive. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. So first of all, lists. It's kind of going beyond just thinking, what am I proud of that I've done? What am I grateful for about today? What have I appreciated today? And actually writing it down. It solidifies it somehow. It makes us really focus, even just for a minute. And it makes it a more intentional and conscious way of thinking through those things that might make us feel a bit better. And then the other one was running, but as Sam said, that not everybody's into running, but there's just something about getting out and remembering that there's a wider world out there. And for Sam, that's running. For someone else, it might be walking or volunteering in a community garden. But something about connecting with the wider world in whatever way suits your personality and your interests that I think is really valuable. In episode 179, I talked to Dr. Victoria Ruby Granger about her research. She's an academic and she had done some research into how hoarding behaviours develop and also looking at the potential for early intervention for hoarding disorder. How do we help somebody before things feel like they're in a really dire situation? Have a listen to what Victoria said to answer this question. And in terms of your own life, what is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
Oh, that's really interesting. I would say the main thing has been understanding what works for me. Because I'm realizing now that perhaps certain things that I've tried in the past don't necessarily work. And instead of trying to double down on I will just try harder at this thing that doesn't work, has been kind of actually sitting down and going, but how do I work rather than how does how does this thing work that I'm trying to do? And I think that and accepting that, the way my brain works, for example, is not necessarily the same as the way everybody else's brain works, that has been really helpful in terms of sort of mental health, because you learn to just accept that, sometimes things are not going to work in the way that they're supposed to. In terms of, I'm thinking about strategies for like productivity and organization and things like that, and understanding that that's okay.
Yeah.
That it's not your fault if that thing doesn't work. Perhaps it's just the wrong tool for the job for you, and you find the right one, and happy days.
Yeah, just because it works for the person who wrote the book about it working doesn't mean it works for everybody, and doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your brain if it doesn't work for you. It just means
Absolutely.
A different thing is your thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. No, I really liked this answer from Victoria, because we can get so stuck in trying to follow advice that just doesn't suit our way of thinking or behaving or our personality, and then feeling like we have failed when it doesn't work for us. And some advice we may resist for avoidant reasons, but there is other advice that we try or that we just know isn't suited to the way our brains or our bodies work. And this point of not doubling down and trying harder at things that don't work was so lovely to hear, because we tire ourselves out trying to do things in a way somebody prescribed and then feel like we've failed when it doesn't work, when in fact there's a different way that would work for us and that wouldn't feel so much like an uphill struggle if we can let go of the ones that simply are not good fits for us. We make space for the advice or techniques that have a chance of really helping us. In episode 183, I talked to Carrie Lagerstedt, who's a professional organiser in New Zealand. We talked about executive dysfunction and about making our homes work for us rather than us working for our homes. It was a really good conversation I had with Carrie. So I asked Carrie the same question. Have a listen to her answer. What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
I think it's moral neutrality. I don't know whether that is a sort of a practice, but
yeah, that works.
Yeah, it's just seeing things as stripping away the emotion
So, like, for me, I'm pretty good at being late in most places I go. And I had a friend who felt really offended that I had arrived late. And I said to him, I said, I'm not late because I disrespect you. I'm late because I just have no concept of time. And I feel bad that I've let you down. And I'm sorry for that. But yeah, again, stripping away the morality of being late because he is a busy person and I had wasted his time or I had made him feel frustrated. But it didn't make me a bad person. I felt sad and apologetic because I'd made him feel bad.
Yeah.
But stripping away, again, just stripping away the way that my executive functions affect my life. Is executive dysfunction is morally neutral. I think that's a lovely way to sum it up.
Yeah. Yeah. You were late and that annoyed him. And also you're not a bad person. It's all of that is true.
Yeah. So I think that's really helped to improve my self-worth and self-esteem.
Good. Now I love this. The moral neutrality of messiness, of cleanliness is something I've talked about before on the podcast, in particular in the interview I did with Casey Davis, who wrote the book How to Keep House While Drowning. But Carrie mentioned it in slightly different terms, which was about the moral neutrality of executive dysfunction. If your brain works in a certain way and doesn't work in other ways, that's not a moral failing. It is morally neutral. And we can try and work out how our brains work best. But beating ourselves up for the way our brains work doesn't get us anywhere, doesn't fix the problem, and just makes us really miserable. That kind of stripping away the emotion that she talks about and instead just saying, okay, here's the situation, what can I do about it? Rather than here's the situation, I'm a terrible person and a massive failure. What can I do about that? It's a really sensible approach that I think I could definitely do with applying to my own life a bit more. So then we whiz forward to episode 204, when Dr. Jan Eppingstall and I talked about identity and our possessions. What do our possessions say about our identity? And how do we feel our identity is affected by our possessions and affects the possessions we have? This was the second time I asked Jan this question this year, and she had another answer to add to her previous one, which is excellent. So have a listen to Jan's summer answer as opposed to her, well, actually, summer in my part of the world, winter in her part of the world answer to this question. What is one habit or practice that has either improved or helped you to maintain your own mental health?
I was thinking about this today. Definitely my pets. So petting my pets. So my dog's ears are the most luscious and cute things. And I love giving him an ear scratch. And my cats just like to sleep with me. And I just love spending. I actually, I don't rush and get up. Sometimes I just think it's nice to just be with them because they're not going to be here forever. So I want to enjoy their presence in my life. And I do find just petting a cat, especially a purring cat, is wonderful for your mental health.
It is. And I'm thinking about a lot of people, because I don't have pets for various reasons. Mostly, this isn't a great environment for something to live in. If I did, it would probably be a cat, which I'm allergic to, all of these things. But I know a lot of people who rent, for instance, and can't have pets, but they will go to the city farm and, go stroke a donkey and look at the guinea pigs and see the pigs and the sheep, or even there's a chain store here called Pets at Home where you go for your pet food and stuff, but also they sell guinea pigs and rabbits and hamsters. And I know people who literally go on a trip to Pets at Home just to look at the rabbits.
Yeah.
So even if you can't have your own animals, there is a real thing where there can be something very grounding, there could be something very relaxing, there could be something very reassuring about, just time spent petting, looking after, appreciating, noticing. You mentioned your dog's ears, like noticing the texture and like, oh, the texture here when I touch this bit of the horse is different to when I touch that bit of the horse.
And how much enjoyment he gets out of a good scratch on his ears. Just the sound that he makes is so cute. It's like, oh, that's heaven. It's so sweet.
Yeah. And when you stroke a cat and it purrs, you really feel like, I've just made the world a better place.
I know. And isn't it something about the vibrations that can the vibrations of the purr can help bones knit and stuff? There's all sorts of crazy, amazing, benefits from petting animals. Japan, of course, they have their petting. You can go to the capybara cafe, or you can go,
we have cat cafes here. Actually,
cafes, we do too. Yeah. And I know that in some big cities, I don't know if you can do it here, but some big cities you can actually go and rent a dog to walk for the day.
Yes, there's a app here that like matches people who need their dog walking with people who want to walk a dog. Yeah.
The other one was recently I was talking to another clinician and she's saying, I found this woman who rescues wombats and she needs wombat cuddlers.
What an offer.
And so I'm going to hook up a bunch of clients, disability clients who love animals, and they're going to go along and be wombat cuddlers because baby wombats are the cutest thing. They are so cute.
That's amazing. What a dream. Because there are a lot of official therapies around animals, like equine therapy in particular has been well studied. But even if you're not in a kind of formal therapeutic role, there just is something. For instance, every time I get close to a cow, I am surprised by how big cows are. I forget in between how big cows are. I think they're big, but they're always bigger than I expect them to be. And I have this experience every time I see a cow up close. And then it makes me laugh that I'd somehow forgotten in the meantime that they really are quite big.
Massive.
They're massive. And there's a whole... And animals can be funny, they can be loving, they could be assholes as well, but even that's probably quite good for us to be reminded of our place in this world. But
exactly, they're the real leaders.
Yeah. So I love that. That is a brilliant habit or practice to be engaged in. And she's right. There is something so soothing and healing and grounding about interacting with an animal, especially an animal who loves you or feels comfortable with you, especially an animal you love or feel comfortable with. But really, a lot of human-animal interaction can be so good for us. Just even if you don't have pets, when you go to a friend's house and the cat curls up on your lap, or when you go to a farm and see the massive cows, it's good, it's grounding, it's helpful to our psyche to remember that we are part of this bigger world. You know what makes this podcast work? It's you, the listeners. The show thrives due to your amazing support. I work hard on it, And all the time and money I invest is worth it because I know that it helps you as well as me. If you want to lend a hand, there are several options that can really, really help. You can make a one-off or recurring donation. You can head to your podcast app and leave a glowing review. Or you can do your bit to spread the word. If you know someone who hoards, or if you want your friends and family to understand your hoarding better, send them the link or share the episodes on social media. No matter which you do, you're helping keep that Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast on the air. Find out how to offer support at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. So it's only fair for me to answer the same questions, given that I made every guest answer them this year as well. So I am also going to answer the question, what I do that helps to improve or maintain my own mental health. And this feels like a strange question for me to be answering in a year when my mental health has been precarious. But I do think I can authoritatively say that it would have been significantly worse without these two things. So even though I can't say I did these two things and now I'm cured, what I can say is I've been quite unwell, but these are two of the things that have just about kept me afloat. One is creative expression, creative self-expression. Now, this started earlier in the year when I started doing what I called resentful journaling. I didn't want to journal. I hated journaling. However, despite my misgivings, I did find it incredibly helpful to express things, to explore things, to unknot some knotty things. It helped me to work out where some thoughts and feelings were coming from. But I really did hate the process. And over time, what I started doing, instead of writing pages and pages, I started to work out ways to express some of those thoughts and feelings visually instead of through words. And I am a person who gets really tripped up sometimes on finding the right words. So being able to bypass words and focus instead on, okay, what colour is this feeling? Is this feeling neat and tidy, or is it messy and torn? Does this call for a pretty picture or something really ugly or something really horrifying? Now, it's important to know that most of these things I made exclusively for my own eyes. The plan was for nobody to see most of them. Instead, I would say some people have seen some of them. The focus has always been on expressing myself rather than making something that looks good. But there's something about doing something pretty much daily for most of a year that means I've accidentally, occasionally, got a bit good. So I sometimes make things I'm visually quite proud of. And I often make things that are so full of dark thoughts and feelings that I don't want anybody to see them. So I still make for me, I still make to express something or to mark something. I've made a point all year of not only making collages and pictures based on horrible things. I also make happy things. If something made me happy, I will make something visually to mark that as well, to make sure that it goes into my brain as much as I'm getting benefit from processing the hard stuff visually. I'm also getting benefit from cementing the good stuff in my head by sewing it or gluing it or cutting it out. My therapist sees all of the collages, all of them. That feels important because in many ways they are expressing things that I'm otherwise struggling to express. She's the only person who has seen them all. There are some that a number of people have seen, and there are a few that a few people have seen. But ultimately, this is a thing I do for me, not to impress people or to convey something so much as to express it myself. A side effect is that it can help me to communicate things, but I always keep in mind that that's not the point. But self-expression looks different to everybody. For some people it is writing words, for some people it's drawing or painting, things I cannot do. For some people it's singing or writing poetry. We don't have to be good at it. In fact, I still have to start pretty much everything by giving myself permission for it to be terrible. It's the only way I can start. But when we remember it's about the expression and not about a perfect thing at the end of it, it can actually allow us to overcome some of that perfectionism and do it. The other thing I found incredibly beneficial to my mental well-being this year is getting out into nature, but not just getting out into nature. An important part of it for me seems to be getting out into nature and really noticing what's around me. When I started going resentfully on walks earlier in the year, I was conscious that I didn't want to just stomp around a beautiful place in a bad mood and then go home. So I gave myself a really simple task, and that was, on every walk, I had to choose which my favourite flower was of all the flowers I saw. And that made me look at the flowers, and it made me notice the differences between the flowers. So I would be thinking, oh, I love the shape of that one, but I love the colour of that one. And then I would start noticing things like, gosh, all the bees in the park are on this one bush. I wonder what's going on there. Or why are the flowers in this park so different to the flowers in that woodland? And so it made me look and it made me pay attention. And then as the year went on, I started adding to that. I would notice my favourite flower, but also which of the many, many, many shades of green I saw was my favourite shade of green. And then it would be which is my favourite leaf. And then as autumn came and flowers were few and far between, I was like, okay, I can't be spotting my favourite flower. I could still choose my favourite leaf, because autumn leaves are really worth looking at and worth noticing. I talked in episode 202 about this, actually, about acting as if, and how I've somehow turned around my hatred for autumn by acting as if, initially, I found autumn leaves interesting and looking at them as if I was interested in them, and how, over time, I became interested in autumn leaves. And seeing them as, oh, that's an interesting change, helped to cancel out some of the doom I normally feel when I see the leaves changing, that I just associate with cold and wet and dread. Noticing ducklings get bigger over the course of the year, noticing which plants look best at which time of year, noticing the difference between quite manicured gardens versus quite wild woodlands, noticing the berries at this time of year, noticing the bird song. The more you start looking and listening and smelling and all of these things, the more there is to look at and listen to and smell. Because whereas I always liked nature, I enjoyed it, but zooming into the detail helps me to really be grounded and mindful and present. It reminds me that there is a giant world out there that's on its own cycle. It's much bigger than me and my worries and my life. And these are things that change out of my control, and you just have to allow them to change. You can't stop them changing. But what you can do is notice the changes and learn and tune in and feel more connected to this weird world we're all living in. So I would love to know if any of those tips resonate with you. I would love to know if there is anything in there that you're going to give a really good try to, or if there's anything you would want to add to the list. Do drop me a line on social media or by email. It would be great to hear from you. I am going to be taking a few weeks off over Christmas and New Year. I will put previous favourite episodes up on the feed, so don't worry about that. You won't be left with nothing to listen to. I know not everybody has a bustling social calendar or does things for Christmas, and I don't want to leave a big hole where the podcast would normally be. And then I will be back in the new year. I need to do a bit of thinking over that time about how the podcast is going to look going forward, how I can make it more sustainable in terms of my time and my energy and the costs, the various costs. And I'm going to work that out, hopefully, over Christmas. And I will be back with you in 2026. There are already Hoarding Accountability Zoom sessions in the calendar for January. So if you want to start 2026 off determined and raring to go, do grab tickets at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. And I will see you there. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to that Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast.